Hey guys, Peshek.dev here. Welcome to Authentic Release Notes for version 2025.12. This video demos some of the new features, shows you how to integrate them, and guides you on managing the breaking changes. Quick overview, we're going to be releasing Endpoint Devices in preview. This is an enterprise feature, but Endpoint Devices allow you to register a device, a Windows, Mac, or Linux machine, with your Authentic instance. So you can do things like log into your machine with your Authentic credentials, monitor details on your machine like hard drive encryption status, or SSH into other machines. We're also giving you the ability to do CSV Data Exports in this release. This is another enterprise feature, but you can export user data and event data in CSV format. We also made a really big overhaul to our role-based access control. There's definitely some breaking changes that go along with some of this overhaul, and I'm going to give you some steps on how to fix those, as well as give you a pretty good overview as of the changes made with that. We've also added Passkey Autofill. This allows for a little bit more passwordless experience for your users. If they have a passkey registered, when they go to the login page, they'll automatically be prompted to log in with a passkey. And we've added quite a few other features as well that I'm going to go over. Now, starting with the endpoint devices. As I said, you can register a device with Authentic. This does require installing some software on that machine. Now, I'm not going to go massively into detail on configuring every OS and things like that in this video. It is more of an overview, but I'm definitely going to put content out around that. So for now, I'm just going to walk you through registering a Mac to Authentic and altering your login flow so that only an Authentic registered device can log into your Authentic instance. Now, the first thing we need to do is prepare our Authentic instance to use endpoint devices. In order to do that, we need to import a custom flow. So we're going to go to Flows and Stages and hit Import. And we're going to wget a blueprint we can import that will automatically give us the flow that's used for endpoint devices. So I'm going to wget this blueprint onto my desktop, and the link is going to be in the description. After we have that, let's go ahead and upload that and import the flow. Okay, now if we head over to our brand settings, System, Brands, Edit. If we go to our default flows, we'll see that the device code flow that we just uploaded is automatically applied as the default for our brand. So now that Authentic knows the flow to use to manage endpoint devices, we're going to create an application provider combo to handle the authentication for the endpoint device. Now we're going to call the application authentik-CLI, the CLI, if you will. And we're going to make this as an OpenID provider. Now we do need to make this public client type. And when we do that, we're going to make our client ID authentik-CLI. And the last thing we're going to need to do is add the offline access scope just like that. And then we create our application provider combo. And Authentic is now configured to handle endpoint devices. So now we're going to create a connector to connect Authentic with our endpoint device. So head over to our endpoint devices and go to connectors. I'm going to create a new connector, and we'll literally just call it connector. Now under authentication settings, we're going to select the provider that we made for our Authentic CLI and hit finish. Now that we have this connector, we can click it and we get a download link that we can use for whichever operating system our endpoint device is going to be running. Doing this on a Mac, so I'm going to click Mac. You can see I've installed the Authentic agent. Now on Macs, the PKG is not trusted by default. So we're going to run this command. Once again, it can be found in our documentation or in the description in order to remove the restriction off that file. And now that we've done that, you can go ahead and install. We now need to make an enrollment token for our machine. Let's click Create. I'm going to call this one Mac because I'm using it on my Mac. Click Create. We see that we can copy the token. Now before we do that, let's open up a new terminal instance. Just make sure if we run AK that we get to run the authentic agent. Everything seems to be working. Now when you install the authentic agent, you install a couple different command line tools that help out, AK the main one. But we're actually going to call another tool. It is the AK systemd. We're going to run this in order to configure our device to connect to our authentic instance. Now here we've put domains join. Now whatever you put here is what you want to call your authentic instance. I just use main authentic. But whatever you want to call your authentic instance is what you put there. And then authentic URL is the URL to your authentic instance. Simply run that. You'll be asked to put your password in. And then after that, you need to put in your enrollment token. Now that we've done that, we can come over to our devices, and we can see that our device is now connected and registered in authentic. And we can also see that if we click on our device, we can see all the different things that the authentic agent is tracking, such as the operating system, if my firewall is enabled, or if my disk drive is encrypted. Okay, we're now going to configure authentic so that only registered devices are able to log in. In order to do this, we need to set a challenge key on our connector and add an endpoint stage to our default authentication flow. We also need to install the Authentic SSO browser plugin. The link will be in the description below. Head over to your connector. Click on the Edit button. Go to Device Compliance Settings and select the certificate. After that, head to your Flows and Stages, click to Flows, and go to your default authentication flow. Go to the Stage Bindings up top and click Create and Bind Stage. I'm going to create an endpoint stage. I'm going to call this stage Device Authentication. Select the connector and say Device Required. I'm going to set the order to 15 because I want this stage to happen after the identification stage, which is order 10. And now we can log out and test our stage. Now we will put in our email or username. We see that it was very quick there, but we have a verification that double checks that we're on a device that is registered with Authentic, which we passed. From there, we just put our password in. And that's it. So there's definitely a lot of really cool things you could do with this feature. And as we said, it's in preview right now, but we're really excited to share this with everyone. If you want to try this out, please reach out in the Discord and we'll be sure to get you set up. So another feature we added this release is the promoted sources. So your federated sources before always showed up as these icons here, right? They're just small. But with this feature, you can now show them as banner type buttons, more like the standard login button that we have. So I'm going to log in really quickly. I'm going to show you both how you can enable this and what it looks like when it's enabled. Now all you have to do for this is go to your directory and your federated and social logins. And anyone that you want to promote, we're going to promote Salesforce. We just click this promoted button right here. And do the same thing for Slack, just to show you that you can do this for multiple providers and to show you the difference of what it looks like having some enabled and some not enabled, right? This is just a third empty source to show that off to you. And these buttons are what the promoted sources look like when they're enabled. So you can see they're much more prominent. You can see that the other non-promoted sources show up underneath as well as a little icon, and you can have multiple sources promoted at the same time. This release also gives us a localization improvement of our Locale Selector. This is available on the login screen, so when a user shows up before they've even authenticated, they can start customizing their experience with Authentik and making sure that they're getting the language that they need. So you can see now on our login screen that we have this Locale Selector. Now the really nice thing about this is that it does actually geo-detect. So if someone is coming from a different region, we automatically pick that up and change the language for you. But users can also go ahead and click the option and go in the drop-down and update to whatever language that they choose. And you can now see that our language is updated, and we can log in as usual. And after that, that language will also stick with us throughout the session. And we definitely have more plans in the future to do more things around localization and translations. So another feature we've added with this release is the Passkey Autofill. So now, when a user goes to log in, instead of having to put their information in or select to use a passkey, they will simply get a prompt right away to log in and authenticate with their passkey, and then they can go right into their session. So you'll see with this feature enabled, you'll just immediately be asked to use your registered passkey. And if I click this right here, I simply sign right in. Now, to enable this feature, all you have to do is head over to your flows, underneath your flows and stages. Go to your default authentication flow. Now we're going to go to our default identification stage and edit that stage. We're going to come down to our passkey settings. And here, we're going to select the default authentication MFA validation. Now what this does is it tells the identification stage, hey, if someone shows up and they have a passkey, let's use this existing stage that already knows how to handle passkeys and just validate them right in. Now we can update our settings. And in order for this feature to work, the user needs to be registered with a passkey. Now, there are ways to force your user to register a passkey on login, but I'm going to show you the steps on how a user can manually create a passkey on their account by walking you through the steps on how to do it on your account. Now, if you head to your settings here, then you head to your MFA devices here, you can click enroll and enroll a WebAuthn device. Now, I'm just using LastPass, so I'm simply going to save that. You can see I've registered that passkey now. And when I sign out, I'll be asked to use the feature. Now, the nice thing about this too is that it is not a hard requirement. So if I go back in, if I delete this passkey and I go to log back in, you can see that without that passkey, when I go to log in, I'm simply just not prompted. And I can continue the password flow as usual and completely fine. So this feature is really nice because for those users you have that are using passkeys, they can get the benefits right away. And it doesn't hinder anything for any of the users you have that haven't started using passkeys yet. Now we did make some changes to the mobile view for our flows and stages. Mainly things kind of like breakpoints and just a little bit of stylistic changes. Now, this isn't a major shift, but it's something to be aware of just in case you have some custom styles you may need to update. I'll show you a quick side-by-side just so you can see the difference. So we're also releasing the CSV Data Export feature with this release. So you can now export user and event data in CSV format. And as you can see, this is an enterprise feature, so you do require an enterprise plan to do this, but let's walk you through how it works. So once you're at your Authentic dashboard, you simply head over to Directory and Users. And just to kind of show this here, I'll create a new user really quickly. We're going to add little Bobby tables. And a little Bobby. Okay. We're going to create our user. And we have this export button here now. So we're going to click that. We see that we get this notification. We've exported our data. Now this will output in the new data folder that we've been using. We talked about this a little bit in the files update in the breaking changes. But this will export here. And we can now see here we have our CSV of users. And right there, that little Bobby tables. Look at them. So you can also export event data as well. Can show you how that works. If we head over here to events and logs, we now have an export button here as well. We can click that. And we can see all the events that have happened. Now, we did add a new section to the Authentic admin interface here called Data Exports. You can click this. You can see the different export data types that were requested, who requested them, all these different things, and you can get a download link. So we could click that, open it up, and see our CSV values. So another thing we've added with this release is our new glossary page. So before, we did have a terminology page, which had a handful of different terms you could learn. But the glossary page is much more involved. So you can see here the glossary is pretty extensive. And there's a lot of different terms in here, whether it's things authentic specific, all the way to general, really good to know authentication or authorization terms, things specific to SAML, OIDC, SCIM, any words that may come up that you may be curious about, we've put in here for you. So you can see here, we have different terms, and that term will be defined. We will then have a little bit of information saying, what it actually is. So for example, applications. This is an authentic specific one, right? An application is what you authenticate into Authentic with, and they are displayed on the My Applications page under the user interface. And you can click Show Details to get more details on the term. An application is paired with a provider, and with defined policies and other configurations, controls user access. It also holds information like UI name, icon, and more. If you see any terms that you think should be in here that aren't, please send us a pull request. We'll be happy to add it, whether it's a authentic specific term or just a general authentication term. Now for the role-based access control, there's some really big changes here that we've made. You can see in our breaking changes section, we kind of break some of these changes down. And I'm going to give an overview of the changes here, and then in the upgrade steps, I'm going to show you how you can fix any problems you run into with this. Now the first big one is group name uniqueness. It has been for about the last year and a half, since 2024-6, that through the API, we stop you from making groups with the same name. We've made it in this release so that we enforce this on a database level now. So this means if you go through the upgrade process, let's say you have 2 groups that are both admin, when you go to upgrade, you're going to get a big warning saying you can't have two groups of the same name. The same name restriction is case sensitive. So if you have capital A admin and lowercase a admin, you won't run into this problem. But the fix here is pretty simple. I'm going to show you what it looks like when you go to upgrade, what that error is that you'll see, and fixing it is as simple as renaming that group. Another big change is permission inheritance. So this kind of goes along with the group hierarchy changes that we made. But before, groups could only have one parent, as to where now groups can have many parents. And as a part of that, before, groups only inherited the isSuperUser flag from their parents. Now, groups inherit all of their parent groups' roles. So the only really big thing to look out for with this change is if you've accidentally configured groups in a way that you didn't mean to, you might have some groups that are inheriting roles that they weren't before, right? So just be aware of that. After you do your upgrade, just make sure you have all the right roles on the right groups. And the last big one is user permissions. So before, we would allow you to go to a user and put permissions directly on a user. We no longer allow for that. So instead, you can set your roles. You can get whatever permissions you want put on a role and assign that role to a user, but you can't just directly assign permissions to a user. Now, the workaround that we did for that is pretty simple here. If you have users that have permissions already set to them, we just bundle all those raw permissions into a custom role, and that role is automatically applied to the user for you. Okay, so I just want to walk you through a little bit of some of the role-based access control changes, some of the things that you might see when you go to upgrade. For this instance here, I got a 2025-10. I've made the user Parmesan here. Parmesan has some direct permissions. They're in brand control, as all cheese should be. And you can see here I went in the database and altered and made a group name security twice. So you can't do this through the API anymore, but you can still do it on a database level, right? We're going to go ahead and go through some of these update changes, both the file changes and the role-based access control changes here. So the first breaking change we're going to do actually is going to be our moving the data location. So we're going to Docker compose down. We're going to make the new data folder, just like that. And we're going to move our media directory. See, we have that in there. So that's the first thing we do for some of the file stuff. Now we're going to go ahead and grab that new Docker compose. Now we're going to boot this up. And the first thing I'm going to do is show you what it looks like when we have these breaking changes with the database. So if we go into our Docker desktop and check the logs, we're going to see that we're getting right detail. Key name security is duplicated. And we'll also see this in our Postgres logs. So the fix here is pretty straightforward. I'm just going to open up the Docker compose file. I'm going to expose the port for Postgres. And I'm going to connect with Postico and simply update the name of the group. I'm going to go ahead and here. I'm going to expose it on a different port number just because I tend to have Postgres running, being exposed from other Docker containers, things like that. Now we're going to Docker compose up-d again. This will still be erroring, and that's okay. I'm just going to go ahead and connect here. I see this group security. I'm going to actually rename it to security 2. Save those changes. After we've done that, we can just rerun our container. We'll see that this is now going through. Now coming back over here, we'll see on 2025-12. Our group name has been updated. And if we check on our user Parmesan here, they now have the roles directly assigned to them. There's a new view for permissions. We don't see the individual ones. That's fine, but it auto-made a role for us. Has the permissions that we had before, and we're good to go. And just to quickly show you some of the new role inheritance and the way that you can have multiple parents on a group now, I've created the groups parent 1 and parent 2, which each have a role connected to them. And I made child, which has both of them set as parents. You can see that we show you which roles are inherited, which ones aren't, and you can also come to the roles tab. You can see which roles have been directly assigned, as well as which ones are being inherited. So just double check after this update. Make sure that there isn't any accidental inheritance that you didn't expect. Now, I did add quite a few integration guides as well this release. Some notable ones being Amazon Business, ChatGPT, Keycloak, Microsoft 365, and Salesforce. Definitely want to give a big shout out to Nice Devil 007. They added quite a few integrations this release. We really appreciate that. And that's it for this release. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And if you want to check out the Endpoint Devices features, please reach out to us. We do want some people to test this out, so drop a comment, come to our Discord. Any way that you want to contact us, we'd love to hear from you and get you set up. Thanks. See you next release.